Today on Inspired Money.
The premise is, of course, not only should there be alignment with your values and your purchasing decisions, but also knowing that how you spend your money and who you spend your money with can significantly impact the lives of others.
This is episode 78 with founder and CEO of To The Market and author of Buy the Change You Want to See, Use Your Purchasing Power to Make the World a Better Place, Jane Mosbacher Morris. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker, welcome back. If it's your first time listening, welcome. Inspired Money is different from other personal finance podcasts because we don't want to just learn how to live with money. We want to help each other to live richer lives, make a greater impact, and together, we can make the world a better place. Thank you for joining me on this mission. So do you want to help change the world? What would happen if we just slowed down to make more thoughtful decisions about what we buy? Today's guest, Jane Mosbacher Morris, tells us that we can and should do that. She's the founder and CEO of To The Market, a social enterprise. She previously served as Director of Humanitarian Action for the McCain Institute for International Leadership, and she worked at the U.S. Department of State. She's even served as an investment consultant to Barbara Corcoran of ABC Shark Tank. In this episode, you'll learn the importance of seeing a need, that it's possible to change your career, and that you can do well by doing good. You'll see how Jane created her business to help make the world a better place. And she'll give you tips on how you can start with micro changes in your life to make a bigger impact. Now let's get inspired with Jane Mosbacher Morris. Jane, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
My parents gave each of us an allowance that was, of course, very modest. And I think it literally was like $1. But what they did with that allowance is they helped us learn about money because they asked us to always save 10% and tithe 10%. So I have a very distinct memory of putting a dime in a can where I would keep my donation money, and then a 10 cents in a can where I would keep my savings. And that was a really great lesson for me.
That is an awesome start. I know that we're talking today because you're an entrepreneur and author, but before we get into it, can you talk a little bit about your amazing background? How did you get here from your start in government?
Well, I started my career in counterterrorism at the State Department, and I was traveling all over the world and meeting with people in different countries, and I kept hearing feedback from them how important the dignity of work is. And it really cemented in me how powerful and important market-driven approaches are because they help to create and sustain jobs. And based on that feedback I was getting, I began studying industries, specifically in the developing world, and came across the artisan industry, which is essentially the word used to describe the production of products. It could be things like apparel, it could be accessories, it could be home goods. And I realized that there was so much more opportunity to connect makers of products around the world to U.S.-based brands, retailers, and corporations, and decided to embark on a path to make that a reality, and ultimately founded my business, To The Market, which connects ethical suppliers around the world to brands, retailers, and corporations.
What kind of countries did your work take you to?
Well, my original work in the government took me to all sorts of countries. So sometimes it was countries in Europe where we had partner programs that were engaging with civil society on issues related to terrorism. Occasionally, it would take me to countries that were struggling with terrorism, so places like Afghanistan. And then as I expanded my work and began to incorporate some work on labor exploitation and human trafficking, I started doing a lot of travel to South Asia. So Cambodia, Vietnam, India.
And I understand you enjoyed your job in the counterterrorism. Was it a difficult choice to make the shift into starting your own business?
It wasn't a difficult shift in the sense that I felt very strongly that I was in the right place, and I am in the right place, starting a business and running a business. But I would say that the learning curve was very steep. And it was steep because I moved into the retail industry, and it is a very different industry than the counterterrorism industry. So I had a lot of work to do on relationship building.
Maybe it's a different type of terrorism. Consumer terrorism.
Well, it's definitely a different group of people. I mean, I jokingly say that I went from peddling peace to peddling tote bags. And so it's just a completely different crowd.
So you're a millennial. Can you talk for a minute on behalf of your generation? Like, what do you look for when buying a product or service?
Well, millennials and Gen Z, so the generation behind me, we control the most purchasing power in history. And I would say that our expectations for business are the most extensive in history as well. So our view of the role of businesses has shifted quite a bit from previous generations, where we now see businesses as a part of the community and feel like they should be good corporate citizens. And so I think that we've moved a bit away from the idea that they're solely there to provide a product or a service, and see them as an integral part of the culture or our landscape, our country, and in turn expect them to be considering their impact on people and the planet in their basic operations.
Yeah, with social media and the ease of communication, it even becomes more powerful that this generation wants to affect change and have a very positive impact.
Definitely. This generation, millennials, Gen Z, they are very activated. They are very involved in the community. We are more connected than ever to one another across the globe. So it is harder than ever to hide bad practices within a business. And so it's become more and more important in turn for businesses to showcase that they do have a clean supply chain, or they do have transparency in their wages, or they do have, they are making strides to be as sustainable as possible. If not only because not doing so, there's not much you can do to hide or shield your customers or your investors or your employees from your operations.
Yeah, I see that you're trying to affect change on several fronts. Can you tell me a little bit more about To the Market and how you're trying to make a difference, whether you're working business to business or business to consumer? Because I understand that you're doing both.
We are. So we have a part of our business, which is a direct-to-consumer marketplace, where we allow for earlier stage artisan groups who likely don't have yet the production capacity to service enterprise retailers or brands or corporations. We give them the opportunity to produce products and make them available to consumers around the world. So that's tothemarket.com, our artisan incubator. But the vast majority of To the Market's business is in fact connecting ethical suppliers of apparel, accessories, and home goods to brands, retailers, and corporations. And our vision is to fundamentally change the way that retail manufacturing is done to create a better outcome for people, for the planet, and ultimately, we think better products and better businesses.
And it's this artisan industry that it's really big, right? It's much larger than many people realize.
You're absolutely right. The artisan sector is actually the second largest economy in the developing world. So agriculture is the largest economy in the developing world, and the artisan sector is the second largest economy. But unlike agriculture, which I think has seen some really exciting work by major businesses to syndicate the supply chain and move more and more deeply into developing countries and source new bring online new farms or new producers of product. We have not necessarily seen this in the artisan industry, meaning we haven't seen a major retailer decide that they're going to actively scout new suppliers of product around the world and make an effort to incorporate these new suppliers of, let's say, bags or baskets or whatever it may be into their supply chain. So there is a lot of opportunity because there's tremendous untapped production capacity for really unique and important products to be connected to these brands and retailers.
So it's a really cool opportunity. You've created this platform to match one side to the other. You're trying to bridge that gap. Is that very difficult work? Like, do you have to spend a lot of time overseas vetting these artisan producers?
We don't have to spend nearly as much time overseas as we used to. So I started the business several years ago and really spent the first 2 years building out our supply chain and identifying and vetting suppliers that met our criteria of operating ethically for both the way that they employed people, who they employed, and what their environmental footprint was. But because of that initial upfront work, it's now a function of us actually selling against our existing suppliers. So really focused on growth to our brands, our corporations, and our retail clients, rather than having to focus on continuing to be on the ground, identifying and vetting new suppliers.
And where are we in 2019? Is this a difficult sell to the corporate partners, or is it an easy sell?
You know, it has become easier and easier, even in the last year and a half. It is a really difficult retail environment for legacy retailers. And it's largely because of course, online players who are making it harder and harder for retailers to drive foot traffic or compete on price. And so what the tools that are available to them largely focus on having exclusive products and unique products, and also having products that appeal to the next generation of buyers, so that millennial and that Gen Z buyer. And so because of that, retailers and brands are really looking for new sources of production. And that could be ethical producers, meaning it could be that they now just want to produce fair trade t-shirts rather than, conventional t-shirts to sell. Or it could be that they want a more artisanal product that they make available to their customers that one can't find on something like an Amazon.
So your business can really be quite broad because you can work with sort of mainstream retailers who are looking for fair trade t-shirts or a specific type of product. But I've heard you talk about like the corporate gift market before as well.
The corporate gift market is huge. So we have a huge business that focuses on servicing corporations for their procurement needs. And it's amazing when you take a step back and you think about what businesses buy. Businesses of almost all shapes and sizes, whether it's Fortune 50s or it's solopreneurs, almost all of us are buying something that has our name on it. It could be pencils, notebooks, It could be business cards, end of year gifts. And that market combined is about a $21 billion industry in the U.S. a year.
Wow.
It's quite significant. Yeah. And more and more corporations and, small businesses are wanting to say something about themselves in the products that they're gifting. So if I care deeply, for example, about supporting jobs in the U.S., and I have stated that, and that's a part of my brand ethos, then me providing a product to my clients that is made in the U.S. as my end-of-year gift makes a lot of sense. Makes certainly a lot more sense than me saying that, I care about U.S.-made jobs, but then I'm handing out something that may be being made overseas. And so I think businesses and corporations of all sizes are really realizing, gosh, especially if I'm putting my logo on something, this product should really be a reflection of my values.
Yeah, I love that. And especially with the popularity of Marie Kondo, whenever I go to a conference, my wife warns me, don't bring home more junk that you don't need.
Yeah.
The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/078. If you're listening in your car or wherever you are, check the show notes if you want to learn more about Jane or things mentioned in this episode. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Today I want to talk about tax refunds. According to the IRS, about 75% of American taxpayers get some sort of refund. That means that you pay more in taxes than you owe the government, and the government is returning the amount overpaid. With millions of Americans who have already finished their 2018 taxes, there are many scary headlines floating around that say that your tax refund this year is likely to be much smaller, or in some cases, you could even owe the government more money. Now, here's a fact. The IRS has reported that the average refund issued so far this year was down 8.4%, or on average, that's $1,865. Why is this different? In December of 2017, President Donald Trump signed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So basically, these changes were meant to put more of your money into your hands. That means that it's likely that your employer took less money out of your paycheck, making refunds less necessary. So there's no need to read the clickbait articles that want to scare you. If you find that you want to increase your withholding, use a W-4 form to tell your employer how much to withhold depending on how many allowances you're claiming on your paycheck. Usually the number of allowance you have includes yourself plus a number of dependents that you have in your family. So for example, if you have 2 children, then the number of allowances you ask your employer to collect taxes for would likely be 3, you and your 2 children. And that's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by my company, Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. A quick shout out to Sam in Portland, who listens to the show. Last week, we had a short chat. It was great to hear what his goals are and to talk through them. If you want to schedule a short chat, go to inspiredmoney.fm/15. That's inspiredmoney.fm/15. I'm happy to talk money, investments, the show, whatever. Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. This is Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong. Can you share like a real world example of one of your partners and how it really makes a difference for their brand and for the people who pick up the corporate gifts?
Well, I think that, the purpose of giving somebody something that has your logo on it. And again, I could be a top 10 company in the world, and I could be a solopreneur selling jewelry, let's say. If I decide to gift someone something with my logo or my name on it, my intention of gifting them that something is for them to then have a positive association of me and my brand, and hopefully to think of me in the future and want to engage with my business. I mean, that's really the purpose. It's a relationship building. It's a marketing opportunity. It's a branding opportunity. And you're hoping that if, you've gifted someone that keychain, that I'm going to look down at that keychain, remember that, this law firm exists and specializes in X or Y, and I'm going to reach out to that law firm when I need help. Well, if you're giving out a product that has your name on it that is either, not of use, meaning it's just, a junky product that's not practical, or it's just so junky and, ununique that there's no reason for me to feel compelled to keep that pen or whatever it may be, then I'm likely not going to keep it. And certainly, in not keeping it, I'm not going to think of you and then think to hire you. And so what we've really encouraged people to consider is, gosh, if you're going to spend money on a product with your name on it, don't you want to have the return on an investment where someone actually keeps it, and not only keeps it, but feels compelled to talk about it? And I think you can create that opportunity when you really gift product that is reflective of your value.
Is there a product that you sell that just has a really compelling story?
I think there's a lot of products. I love the products that we're providing. One example is Hint Water, which is, I think an amazing business that provides, that's a flavored water that uses, natural fruit to flavor, or vegetables to flavor water, sold all over the U.S. And they have product, of course, that they gift to people, and they wanted the product that they were gifting to be made of 100% recycled plastic bottles. So instead of them just handing out, a conventional tote bag, let's say, of a polyester or of a conventional cotton that said their name on it that may or may not get used, they had to the market, my business, create tote bags that were made of 100% recycled plastic bottles. And the story is so compelling, and it's such a special message coming from Hint Water that their customers absolutely love them.
Yeah, it's very cool because it's so connected to the brand.
Exactly. And another example would be Capital One is, of course, a financial institution that focuses, primarily on domestic customers. They are very focused on sort of servicing U.S.-based businesses. And they came to us for corporate gifts and wanted gifts that were made by people in the United States. And so we provided gifts that were custom keychains that were actually engraved by adults with mental disabilities here in the United States. So their corporate gift helped create the dignity of work for people here in the U.S. that have struggled to have job opportunities. And I think that gift, that was actually an internal employee gift, is so much more special and so much more likely to be kept and thought about than if they had chosen to give away, a plastic mug.
Yeah, it's fascinating because you're coming up with really great solutions for some of these corporations to give as their corporate gifts. But at the same time, the benefit from the producer side, it can be so much greater than if they're just buying some inexpensive tchotchkes that don't really mean anything to either side.
Exactly.
You're buying from producers where it makes a difference to them too.
It does. And I think that's also special, is to know, and certainly that's the premise of the book, Buy the Change You Want to See, which, as you know, just came out this week. And the premise is, of course, not only should there be alignment with your values and your purchasing decisions, but also knowing that how you spend your money and who you spend your money with can significantly impact the lives of others. Meaning that a decision to buy T-shirts from one group might feel inconsequential to you as the organizer, let's say, of an event, but to the group who receives that purchase order might be the difference between that group being able to send their kids to school for several months, or to buy water, or even basic necessities. And so really helping people realize the impact of their dollars.
Yeah, that's huge. That's one of the themes that we've seen on this podcast, talking to people who are trying to help communities in the developing world. A dollar goes much further there than it does in New York City. I imagine that you must be a very busy woman leading your company. How is it that you came to the decision to write a book?
Well, when I started to the market, I had a literary agent that had gone to high school with me, approached me and asked me if I was interested in writing a book about sort of the thesis behind my business. And I eventually got to a place where I was comfortable doing that. And I really decided to move forward with that opportunity because I felt like it would allow me and to the market, my business, the chance to really cement permanently our vision and our thesis, which is that all of us can change the world with our purchasing power.
So it really is a movement of sorts.
I think it's so much more than a moment. I think it's absolutely a movement. I think we have shifted our expectations for transparency as it relates to who makes our food and what's in our beverages. And I think that same transparency is now coming to other industries, including the fashion industry, which is, of course, the industry that I'm in.
Well, I love that you say that we have an opportunity to positively impact people or the planet just by thinking a little bit differently about the money that we spend. Can you talk a little bit more about, like, how did you break the book down into chapters? What are you covering?
Well, the book, Buy the Change You Want to See, covers categories that individuals and businesses and even nonprofits spend money on a pretty regular basis. And so it covers everything from custom goods. So it could be the monogrammed towels that I have in my house, or it could be those logoed tote bags that I gift for end of year corporate gifts. And it ranges from topics like that to topics like coffee and chocolate and gifts and apparel and accessories. So just a number of categories that most of us engage with. And each chapter provides practical takeaways and tips for learning more about the industry, how the products that you're buying are being made, and examples of companies that are doing some pretty great things to improve their impact on people and the planet.
So it does take a little bit of work, right, Jane? I mean, one has to be thinking a little bit more deeper about the purchases that we're making and how it impacts the world. It takes a little bit of thinking.
It takes a little bit of upfront research, but what I recommend is picking one category that you care about. So that could be any of the ones I just mentioned. For some people, my husband is, of course, not a big shopper, so apparel and shoes are not top of mind for him. But gifts, he loves to give gifts. That is something that's much more relevant for him. He has a business. He does corporate gifts. He certainly is one of the most thoughtful people I know as it relates to things like birthday and baby gifts. So him understanding what are examples of businesses that are doing great things that provide practical gifts for his gifting needs is relevant. I, on the fashion industry, have, because I love fashion, I have learned as much as I can about that industry and have identified brands that I think I feel comfortable now buying and wearing based on the research I've done. So I recommend picking one industry, researching it, identifying a few players that you feel like are doing a good job, and then committing to spend money with them.
And you also cover in the book that it doesn't take drastic changes on the part of the consumer. Like little changes add up to a lot. Little changes make a difference.
Absolutely. Micro changes are really significant. And it's significant because not only are your everyday decisions, when you add them together, they can be much more meaningful than we realize. But also, if each of us are doing just a little bit, that collectively can add up to a lot. And so I encourage folks, regardless of their budget, regardless of what they think their financial imprint is, to realize that every little bit does truly count because cumulatively it does add up.
So for you, where did it start? Because I know that maybe you're a little bit different because this is your background, your business. And if you go even further back, when you were in counterterrorism, you were observing a lot of what was around you when you were traveling. But you mentioned fashion. So is that where it started for you? That you can look for like where are my clothes being manufactured?
That's where it started for me. It's really spending time on the ground in these countries, in these communities, watching products be made, understanding how much time goes into even mass-produced products, how many hands touch those products. We talk about that in the book, certainly, that even, mass-produced T-shirts and jeans often have more than 30 hands touching them. So helping get a better appreciation for how much work goes into almost everything that we enjoy. And, that's really that personal connection and that personal experience made it very real for me. And it made it harder and harder to pick up something that may or may not be made ethically and be okay with spending my money on it.
Well, definitely everyone's purchasing power can change the world, and we all have to deal with money. Do you have stories about the impact on the other side where there are stories of courage and perseverance? I
have seen so much impact, even in the last couple of years of running this business, where I have seen the growth of the small suppliers with whom we've partnered. I have seen the economic stability of some of the artisans and some of our smaller cooperatives really materialize, even through a handful of orders over the course of a year, where I have heard, this helps pay for school fees, this helps provide water for 3 months. So serious quality of life issues being addressed through what seems like a pretty small purchase order from to the market side.
That is awesome. I love that. So Jane, I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
To me, success is adding value to others. And in my current role as a business owner and as a CEO who has suppliers that rely on our orders all the way up to investors who are committed to the market, I think about adding value as truly my sign of success. So that means making money for all of them at every part of the value chain.
Yeah, and making a difference. Well, thank you, Jane. Thanks so much for sharing your inspired message on how we can make the world a better place. Can you tell the Inspired Money listener how they can follow you and learn more about your book and business?
You can buy the book at Buy the Change You Want to See is available in stores at Target and Barnes & Noble in the business section. It's also available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, and hopefully your local bookstore. If not, they can certainly order it. And then for all of the small businesses, medium corporations who are listening, you can learn more about To The Market and our services at tothemarket.com.
Great. I will have that all in the show notes. And thank you so much, Jane. It's been so great chatting with you, and I really look forward to what else you have in store in the future.
Well, that was lovely. Thank you so much.
So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? I like Jane's way of making small or micro changes that can have a big impact over time. And the idea of voting with your wallet is simple yet powerful. It makes a lot of sense. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment and takeaway, let me know by going to inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. Let's continue the conversation there. I appreciate you joining me and being a part of this mission to make our money more inspired. If you got inspired today, please open your podcast player right now and leave a review. I'd really appreciate it. The music you're listening to right now and all other music on today's show is by the amazing Jim Kimo West. Aloha, Kimo. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.